Roses are red, violets are blue. In between the mountains and the sky, there exists grew. Today, I'll be going over the colors red and blue in pre-modern China in 3D. So from an American perspective, red and blue are opposites. Blue is for boys, red is for girls, or pink. Sometimes it can be pink. They're so similar to each other that they're interchangeable, right? Where does green end and blue begin, right? In China, the same concept exists for green and blue because of how similar they are in hue. It's green and blue, and now you got grew. Now, red is a different story. We think of red and blood as losing blood. They think of red and blood as you need blood to live, blood is a good thing, right? It's kind of the glass half empty, glass half full thing. They think of the color red as blood, but they think of it in the context of life, not death. Rather than red being for girls in China, it's more of a masculine color. A Chinese perspective would look at red more like blood for life and fire for protection, survival, growth. The sun is a big ball of fire. You need that to grow plants. Back in the day before electricity, the sun would have been a very nice thing to see in the morning. And fire would have been very useful to have at night. In this context, it really makes sense that Chinese culture would grow to see red as a very lucky color. As I got into my research, I realized that red and blue were not the two most comparable colors in the context of pre-modern China. Purple and green would have been good to do. Black and white. Red and yellow. Anyways, while blue wasn't necessarily thought of as the opposite of red, it does have many qualities opposite to red. And since red was such a lucky, happy, auspicious color throughout Chinese society, history, culture, one would not dare wear such a color to an event like a funeral. So funerals tended to include quite a bit of blue. And so because blue was relegated to the sidelines and wasn't super sought after because of the dominance of red and other colors, it became the color of the commoner, in particular, the fisherman. Who would have guessed? I found much less on blue than I wanted to, but I take this with quite a grain of salt because of the limited English sources that I think that are out there. I did try to translate some Chinese sources, but things get really confused. This is the most comprehensive guide that I really found to the Chinese color language, and it's just very interesting. It has, the main colors, grew, red, black, white, yellow. There's this thing called cinnabar. It is not similar to cinnamon, it's cinnabar, it's red. It's this. And this is where they got most of their red from in pre-modern China. Fun fact about cinnabar, if you treat it properly, you can get mercury out of it. Imagine seeing mercury for the first time without hearing that scary name that we associate with poisoning. The thing about mercury is that it looks like liquid silver because at room temperature, it just be like that. So Taoists were very into gold and silver. Finding this liquid silver that could absorb, it could eat the gold. Just like many other cultures around the world that discovered gold, the Chinese realized, wow, this stuff's really durable. It lasts for a really long time. And it came to symbolize immortality. Now, there also became a belief that you could make gold. If you couldn't get it, you could make it yourself. DIY is totally fine. So when they discovered this liquid silver that could eat gold, that is the real symbol of immortality. Mercury. Taoism is a very big part of Chinese history and culture, and a very big part of Taoism is creating elixirs of life. Though their mercury pills didn't provide their emperor with mortality, they found out a lot of stuff on the way. But some of these things were mercury and cinnabar and the color red, to a point where the character for elixir is the same for cinnabar. Because of the correlation with cinnabar and mercury and immortality, cinnabar and red enhanced their reputation. Later in Chinese history, while royal roofs wore red, the common class was constricted to the color blue. The colors in China is that even though there are 5 main colors with very specific attributes to them, everything exists in context. If it's pure red, that's top notch. If it's pure blue, grew, top. If it's pure black, top notch. Pure white, top notch. If it's at all compromised by a different color, say the pure red was mixed in with white and now it's just pink. That's not as good as the real deal, the pure 5 colors. At funerals, there were a variety of colors, but everyone stayed away from the color red, and there was a lot of blue. The dead wore some type of blue cloth, and funeral guests would also often wear blue. It's hard to talk about blue because dark blue and light blue have very different vibes. And so while blue is used in situations where you shouldn't wear red, it's not always a negative color. You see a lot of examples in Chinese art. Something interesting I found in my source was that alchemy was known as the art of yellow and white, aka silver and gold. And apparently painting was called the art of red and blue. The Taoists were very into and had a lot of faith in their paintings and alchemy. All right, I'm gonna say this loud and clear as I stare into the camera. Traditionally, blue eyes are regarded as ugly, which makes sense in the culture and all. It's just funny coming from me, who some would argue has blue eyes, which is also probably a large reason why I chose to do blue for this project. I do want to say that I did know before starting this project about the blue-eyed monsters in pre-modern Asia. There's 3 main elements of folklore relating to the color red with China. The first being a mythical creature, and it terrorized the people of ancient China until they figured out it was scared of fire, in the color red, and loud noises. So their solution? Have a festival with a bunch of dancing, a bunch of red, and a bunch of fire. And this is the myth that gave way to Chinese New Year, so very important. But the ideas of using fire for protection and wearing red as a lucky color are very deeply ingrained in this story. Within the story, you can see a lot of elements of fire for protection against wild animals or beasts, and using that and associating it with the color red for protection. Another popular piece of Chinese folklore is the idea of the red string of fate, which many Asian cultures have similar myths, but it is the idea that there is a matchmaking god, and he has tied a string connecting everyone to their fated person. And so they're connected physically but invisibly with a little red string. And you and your fated person are tied together with a little invisible string. Where you're tied together, it depends. But point is, a little invisible piece of string physically connecting you and your fated person together. Whether you actually end up marrying or not, that's not what it says, but it says that you are destined to meet. Red in this context both promotes the idea of romance connected to the color red, but it's also reflective of the culture leading up to the creation of that myth. The final myth with red has to do with the 10 suns. This is the idea that there were once multiple suns in the sky all at once, and it was way too much. People can't handle more than one sun, it's too hot. It was awful for everyone. So people on Earth decided we gotta get him, and they shot him. So now there's only one sun in the sky, the emperor. Multiple kings couldn't rule one land. There could only be one sun. It's just the natural order of things. If an empire has multiple emperors, something's going wrong. If a kingdom has multiple kings, that's not right. The myth very much pushes a political narrative. This was a very brief overview. There's a lot to say about the colors in pre-modern China, so it'd be cool to do an even deeper dive or to look into other colors. But that's it for now. This is for my Summer A session, Chinese Culture and Society class at FIU. Thank you!